Hey guys, alright, welcome to part 2. We're going to start sketching out our poses now based on those images that we created with our ball bounce in Maya. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm just taking an image of my character that I'm going to use, my rig, and I've got my ball in there, and I'm going to start drawing out what kind of posing I want for the bounce. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start just posing out the body of the character. Okay, so at the front here, I'm just going to get a dip down in the character as she's dipping down into the first crunch. Just do a little posing at the front here, holding the bow. Not too worried about the arms, not at this point. I'm just worried about more of the body shape. Okay, taking a look and seeing what my ball is doing there. My ball is just going into a first squash. So now I'm going to get my character to squash down to the first anticipation into that jump. Okay. And I'm going to basically utilize that ball motion to give me my timing and most of my spacing that I'm going to need to pose out my character. I find this way is very straightforward, and doing it this way for me allows me to think of one thing at a time. So right now I'm specifically focused on posing out my character. What kind of poses do I want the character to have as she's bouncing through the air? Okay, and it separates things out for me, so I don't have to think about everything at the same time. Get the character up there and coming into a neutral position at the top, and then starts to stretch back down at the bottom. Alright, gonna come down on one leg. Feel the stretch come in there. I want a nice change of shape as she comes into the bottom. Again, I'm not worrying about the arms yet. I'm just getting the body shape and the legs moving right now. Just trying to feel out that overall stretch. And you can see the ball starting to squash in there, so the next pose is going to be squashing into the ground. Alright, and you can see that kind of gives me my first overall posing pass of that first jump. I've got to fill that in yet. Put in a few breakdowns there, feel out the overall action. Alright, breaking down that squash a little more on her. I want to make sure that body, the arc of that back has got a nice flow to it as it's going through the arc of the motion. The waist is really directing the flow of that motion, and the waist in this case is basically the ball. Got that first jump feeling pretty solid. Breaking down that exit out of the neutral position at the top into the stretch at the bottom. Want to get those legs feeling nice. Okay, you can see I'm just flipping back and forth here, really trying to work those legs and work that body. Alright, get a nice kind of stretch out of that final position. And right here, I can go basically straight ahead at this point because I've already done a lot of my planning with my ball bounce. So this isn't doing pose to pose. This is basically doing straight ahead with some pose to pose mixed in there, depending on what part of it I'm working on. Get up here. Now I'm starting to think about the way she's going to shoot the bow and arrow. All right, so I've got her kind of spinning in air. I'm going to fill that out as I go through here. But right now I'm just posing her out, pulling that bow back. Thinking about what kind of spin I want her to do at the front of that jump. Okay, so I got her spinning around, pulling the bow around. And all I need to think about here is that basic pose, because that timing and spacing is already worked out for me. It frees me up. It frees me up from trying to think of everything at once to just focusing on that pose that I want. And again, this isn't the only way to work. There's, you know, many ways to work. And I use different methods for different shots. You know, this type of shot, I tend to work this way, but if I'm doing an acting shot, I'll tend to work more pose to pose. You know, it all depends on the shot for me as to what approach I take to it. Just feeling that stretch and the twist that I want in the body as she's coming up here, shooting the bow. Lifting up on one leg there. Alright, coming into that middle position. I have that extra hang time at the top there. Breaking down that animation between the pullback on the bow and the stretch. And you want to feel just, you know, just keep your drawings loose here. We're not trying to do tight, fancy drawings. We're just trying to make it nice, solid lines of action and posing here. We're just trying to feel the shapes out. You know, this isn't, you don't want to get real tight with your posing. You can see this is almost like stick figures. But it's all I need to get the action across. I can worry about cleaning this up in Maya, because, you know, that's what this tool is mainly just for really feeling out those poses for me. I'm not worried about making pretty drawings. There we go. And that's what just the pose there where she releases the arrow. And I'm going down, I'm drawing the squash, and then I'm going to break that down from the squash, from the stretch into the squash there. Feel that out. Okay, and then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to break that down, how she's getting into that position. I really want to see that change of shape here as she's coming in. Working out that arrow, what's going to happen as it releases. Alright, that gives me a real good idea of what I'm going to work with when I get into Maya. Okay, I'm playing that arm flow there when she releases that arrow, and how that arm is going to flow down through the rest of the posing. Thinking about the arcs of action there as it's coming down. Now I'm just trying to break down the spin here a little bit. So as the character's spinning, going around and bringing the bow around to the front, I'm trying to break down how that's going to happen. Okay, keep breaking it down here. Again, real simple drawings. You know, I'm just following it through. I'm utilizing that ball that I've already created to give me that spacing that I want. And now I'm just concerned about how I'm going to pose it out. And it gives me the flexibility. I can draw these poses up in seconds. Whereas if I was trying to do this in Maya, or any 3D program for that matter, you can get tangled up in a real complex rig, and it'll take you anywhere from a minute to 15 minutes to a half an hour sometimes to pose out one pose, just because you're trying to manipulate the puppet. You know, when you're just drawing it out like this, you're just doing quick sketches, I can flip out these things in seconds, like, you know, I can try out different ideas real quickly. And that's the advantage of working this way when you're working in a real cartoony type of work here. But you know, it doesn't have to be just cartoony work. But you know, you can take live action reference, and you can take that reference, and then you can stylize it over top. You can draw over top of it, and you know, caricaturize and stylize it to make it not feel like you're copying something, but you're actually building up that you're caricaturizing that reference instead of just trying to, Xerox over top of it. Okay, see here I'm trying out a couple different ideas here. Had an idea here for the character to do a backflip as he's coming down. And then trying it out here, I don't really like that. So I'm going to erase that. I'm going to make it just come down straight. But that gives me the flexibility. I try one thing, I don't really like it. It's real easy to go back in and change it up a little bit. Something that takes me seconds in here, could take you an hour and a half in Maya because you're having to deal with the puppet. Okay. Just feeling it out here, following that ball bounce, coming into that last pose. Squash into that last pose, and then I'll come in just to a standing position. And again, this is just real rough. I'm just trying to figure out the basic action here, the basic poses. Going back into that spin a little bit there. I want to plan that out a little more because that's going to be quite a twist in the body and that. I want to make sure I kind of know where I'm going when I get into Maya. How that bow is coming around. See, I'm changing how the bow is flipping around there. Just start to fill in those arms a little bit, how the bow is going to be drawn back. That feels better. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to start to plan in the rest of those arms. Thinking about how I want the arms to flow through the rest of the action. So I got the body working the way I wanted it, and now I'm going to go back in. I'm just going to fill in some of the rest of that, the rest of those poses. Get those arms flowing around, get that bow pulling around. And you see I'm working at one drawing at a time there, just trying to plan how I'm going to spin that bow around. Holding that bow out in front. And again, these are all just real rough. I'm not concerned about making something real fancy here, because I can do all the fancy work with the rig once I get it into Maya. This is just real almost just basic thumbnail sketches. Just trying to get it out there, get the ideas out of my brain onto the page, so that when I take it into Maya, it's a real straightforward process for me. I've already done all my thinking. I've already done my animation. Like 90% of my animation is already planned out. The last 10% is just executing it in Maya. So for me, this is a way to speed my workflow up. I've planned out all my stuff in advance. All my thinking is already on the page of how the animation should be executed. Sometimes I'll even take just these drawings and I'll just show these drawings to my director and I'll say, does this bring across the feeling that you want for the scene? And I can spend a couple hours doing this, take it over to the director, see what he thinks, or my supervisor, whoever I need to speak with, and they can get a real sense of where I want to go with the scene and buy off on it. And then instead of spending a day and a half or longer playing around with the rig in Maya, now I've done this in a couple hours and I've got a good sense of where I'm going with the shot. Really speeds up your workflow. Okay, and like I said, you can use this approach with anything. This isn't just for cartoony action. You can also work with live action reference and take your reference and draw over it, feel it out. Get a sense of how you can stylize that reference, not just copy the reference. Okay. When you're doing this drawing, you really want to. It's good to, think about get into some life drawing classes. Where you can learn good solid posing, good, the main line of action in the poses and how you want to flow through the energy of your animation. Alright, so continuing just to break down this spin here a little bit. Real rough, just thumbnailing it out here real quickly. Just want to figure it out how I'm going to actually spin that rig around when she jumps up and shoots that arrow. Starting to come along there. I'm liking the action. Now I just got to start finishing off some of the rough pieces here. Finish off the arms, finish off just the end there, how she's going to come into it. Almost there. Okay, I'm going to go back here and just make sure those arcs on the limbs and that are working the way I want them to. Again, just breaking down a little more on that spin. That's the most detailed part of the animation is right in that spin. So I'm just trying to make sure I know where I'm going once I get it into Maya. How I'm pulling that bow around and stuff. I even threw on her ponytail there. You know, I can start thinking about how I want that secondary action to happen in that ponytail. And you know, this can all change, like not everything, but when you get into Maya, you may have a slightly different take on it, and that's fine. You know, this gives you the foundation to work with. It gives you that solid foundation, like building a house. You're not just jumping off with nothing to work with. You have something to start with, and that, you know, that's, like I said, planning is 90% of the work. Once you have something to work with, you know, it makes your Maya work much easier, or your Max work, or whatever software you're using. It doesn't matter. You bring in this stuff onto an image plane, utilize it to pose out your animation, and I think it's really going to help you speed up your workflow. You know, and this can be for anything you're working on. Alright, we're just cleaning up some of the posing here, going through some of the arm, the limbs here, making sure that I get the flow in the limbs that I want, especially pulling up that bow. Real rough here still. Okay, and really just, I don't really care about fancy drawings here. I'm just trying to get the flow of the action that I want. Okay? Don't sit there and spend 10 minutes on a drawing trying to make it look pretty. It doesn't matter. That's not what's being shown on the screen. The 3D puppet's being shown on the screen. So we're just trying to get the good solid posing and the line of action and the flow of the arms and the flow of the limbs, how we want everything to happen. I can make the pretty picture once I get it into Maya. I can use that as my cleanup tool. Alright, I'm thinking about the ponytail there spinning around as she comes up. I throw in my, you can see I have an image of the character rig that I'm going to be using. Throw it in there just as an image, just so I can get the basic size and shape of the character. Okay, we're almost through here. Just doing a little bit of ponytail action there, thinking about how I want that ponytail to flow a little bit. Carry that action through, spin up into the shot. I like that posing up there, nice solid posing. Coming down, get that nice change of shape there. Pull that arm back. And you know, this is great for feeling out how you want those arms and that, because a lot of the times, especially with arms and shoulders, you can get tangled up in the rig, and how am I gonna pull that shoulder up this way, and you know, and a lot of the time you'll be hurting your animation because you're thinking, oh, I'm limited by how far up I can pull that shoulder, because oh, the rig's gonna start breaking like this. Whereas if you're just drawing like this, you just draw the pose you want. You're not limited by anything. You know, once you get it into Maya, and if you have to make some sacrifices because you're restricted by rig limits, then, you know, we can deal with that at that point. But, you know, here was just get all the ideas down. This is where you want to push it. You know, you want to push those poses, get as much as you can out of this. And then we can think about, okay, if we do have to sacrifice something in 3D, in working in Maya, we can just, you know, we can figure that out when we get in there. But here we're not limiting our imagination. We're just putting everything we can, getting the poses and the shapes that we want to get. Alright, so as soon as we got this posed out, we're getting close here. We're going to take this, We're going to export this out and we're going to bring it into Maya on an image plane, and I'm going to start blocking out the rig. All my animation is posed out, ready to go. I know exactly where I'm going. My timing is working. The feel of the character, the spacing is what I want. Now I've thought about all the posing that I've wanted. I've got a real good sense of where I want to go with this animation. And you can see here, it's got a nice flow to it. I'm utilizing that ball bounce. Got that nice spin there. And I'm ready to go to Maya. Alright, thanks guys. We'll see you in the next part.